Always been fascinated by this question. Who am I? Who are we? How do we even begin to define that, if defining it is even possible at all? When everything we think we are, the anxious one, the therapist, the achiever, the partner, the one trying to get it right, when all of that begins to quiet for a moment, what's left? Who's the one noticing all of that? For therapists, it's a question we often invite others to explore, yet rarely pause to experience ourselves. And it's in this awareness, this sense of self that can notice without judgment, that's the very heart of healing. I'm Dr. Matt Bedell, a licensed professional counselor supervisor and licensed chemical dependency counselor based in Allen, Texas. And this is Belonging Matters, where we explore how acceptance and commitment therapy, aka ACT, provides a framework for people to experience deep periods of recovery from social anxiety. In acceptance and commitment therapy, we call awareness the self as context pillar. It's also sometimes described as the observing self, the transcendent self, or the self pivot. They're all pointing to the same experience. The part of us that's aware of our thoughts and emotions as passing experiences, rather than being defined by them. And that distinction matters. It's why I choose to use the self as context term instead of those others, because it carries 4 layers of meaning. First, the self is separate from all of that. 2, we're all acting as. 3, the content of our behavior. And 4, all within the context of life's moments. Admittedly, this is lengthy, yet it's important to have these separations. It's also, frankly, hard because it requires a sense of psychological flexibility just to comprehend this at a deep level. And so often, especially for those living with social anxiety or shame, we start to relate to ourselves as if we're the content, the behavior. Our identity becomes the story, the role, the emotion, the belief, no matter how true it is, rather than being the one noticing all of it. In ACT, in behavior, we call that self as content. When we are fused with the story of I am the problem, I am failing, it's me personally doing that made the mistakes. That's when our sense of identity gets wrapped up into the thoughts, emotions, and behaviors themselves. So self as context is what helps us take a step back from that and see the whole story without being consumed by it. Here's an analogy that helps describe the difference between self as context and self as content. Imagine you're wearing a backpack, and in that backpack are all of the contents of your life. All of the beliefs that you formed, like I am the problem, I'm failing, I might be intelligent too, I might be hardworking. It's also filled with your thoughts, both the harsh ones like the inner critic, they're chilling in there, and the encouraging ones too, supportive self. Inside are your emotions too in that backpack, all fear, joy, excitement, shame, all of those sensations and your tightness in your chest, the butterflies in your stomach. And in that backpack too are your behaviors, the things that you do, the choices that you make. This is quite a magical backpack. So all of these things, the values, beliefs, thoughts, feelings, behaviors, all of that are contents in your backpack. And you are the one carrying the backpack, the self as context. And as you take each step in life, you pull out different context to engage with the context of what you just stepped into. Sometimes what you pull out is helpful, it's curiosity and courage, and other times it's an old belief that weighs you down. But the key is remembering that you are not the backpack. You are the one carrying it. That's the freedom that comes from self as context. You can hold your experiences without becoming them. I'm going to talk to therapists here, yet don't leave if you're not a therapist. Simply notice how these ideas resonate with your own experience. Think about a client that you've worked with, or think about how you yourself have been caught in a thought loop. And you notice that it's irrational, and yet you still believe it is true. Maybe you've tried cognitive restructuring or mindfulness or exposure work, and all those help sometimes. Something's deeper is missing. That missing piece is often this perspective shift. The ability to relate to yourself or themselves differently, to see the story instead of being the story, to being the author instead of being the actor. And when clients experience this pillar, they begin to realize that these are just behaviors that we do. Some of them are automatic when I don't pay attention, and some of them I get to choose when I do. And that shift from behavior to awareness is where genuine change begins. I think of a client who once said, I just can't do it. I'll never be consistent enough. I don't clean. No one will ever want to be with me. I just can't do it, though. And as we slowed down, we began to realize the story underneath. It wasn't really about cleanliness or consistency. It was about connection. Somewhere along the way, the content of cleaning had become fused with worth, as if not having a perfectly tidy space meant being unlovable by all. The task of cleaning wasn't just a cleaning task, it was an attempt to prove their worth. And what a heavy responsibility that adds to an already daunting task for so many people. When we step back and notice the broader pattern, that they had meaningful relationships before, that those connections didn't depend on spotless rooms, something softened. Not to argue with the thought, instead to observe it from a broader distance. And tears began to form as they realized those are just behaviors, they're not me. Yeah, sure, we could tidy up more and put some effort and definitely clean before a date, and those aren't also the blocks to connection. Their fusion with shame was. When we expand and see that true them is the person that cares for their dogs, the kindness for a sibling, their desires to help others, those are meaningful aspects too, they began to see themselves as worthy of connection based on the whole picture instead of a fragmented view of imperfection. That's the moment where self as context emerges, when the story loosens its grip and belonging starts to feel possible again. And through the shame lens, self as context is really sacred work. Shame thrives on identification. It says, you are your worst moment. It fuses identity with imperfection. I failed, therefore I am a failure. Self as context invites a gentle uncoupling. It says, yeah, absolutely. Some painful things have happened and bad things have happened to you. And life is unfair. And we're more than all of these experiences. You're the one noticing these. And importantly, now you can be the one responding to them. I often tell clients, you're not broken. You're the one noticing the pain. And while it's true that you do need a deep understanding of psychological flexibility to really feel this, it's simply about repetition, not talent. Over time, doing this more and more is what belonging begins to feel like. Not the elimination of fear or the absence of anxiety, it's the inclusion of awareness with that. It's holding both with equal weight. That way we can see ourselves as greater than our behaviors. And that if we want to change those behaviors, we can, with compassion, consistency, time, and intentionality. So how do we help clients touch this space? It's less about explaining and more about experiencing, and experiencing is still tough. I think this might be the hardest pillar to digest. These are the ways that I often do it, though. One is the observer exercise. You might say, notice the thoughts that are here right now. And maybe they even say, this is silly, I'm doing this wrong. See if you can take a step back enough to notice, though, that that thought is appearing in awareness. And who's the one noticing it? Another is perspective taking, to have them recall a younger version of themselves, maybe a middle schooler who felt out of place. And then gently ask, can you notice that younger you from the awareness of present day you looking back? Who's the one caring for them as you look back? That separation often brings some emotion, not sadness, although that'd be okay too, from relief. And self as context isn't just cognitive, it can also occur through grounding in the body. When clients can feel their breath and their feet on the floor and the rhythm of being here, awareness becomes embodied and real. I'm noticing that I'm doing this. And of course, one of my favorites is metacognition, thinking about thinking. And really, it's our ability to notice our own thoughts. And this is self as context. It's awareness of awareness itself. As clinicians, our own relationship to this process shapes how deeply we can guide it. If we can stay grounded as the noticer, even as our own self-doubt arises in sessions, we model safety in real time. So maybe the question isn't, who am I? Maybe it's, what am I noticing? Or who's the one asking? And for those living with social anxiety, the shift from being the story to noticing the story, from acting to being the author, is often what opens the doorway to recovery. Because belonging isn't about releasing fear in order to perform better. It's about finding the awareness to hold our fears in kindness and still move towards connection with those too. Now, I think the most important part of self as context is in the context of making mistakes. It's okay to make mistakes. Mistakes are the content of our behavior. It's never personal. The self didn't do anything. The behavior did. The content did. Who made that mistake is a great way to ask it. Was it the therapist you? Was it the client you? Was it the person you? And because these mistakes are behaviors, they're not people. That's the heart of self as context. And that's why it matters for our clients, for our work, and for our own belonging. I'm really glad you're here. And if you're a therapist that this resonates with and you think this might help your clients, I've made a CEU that I've linked below. It goes in much more detail about social anxiety through a shame and trauma-informed lens, and how ACT provides us with a framework in order to develop a specific set of skills and experience deeper periods of recovery. I hope to see you there, and if not, take care, and hope to see you in the next video.